Morning glory and evening grace, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt on this October 7th, the second anniversary of the massacre. I don't think any of us who saw it will ever forget. We're very blessed today to have Haviv Rettig-Gur join us, I believe, from Israel. Haviv should be familiar to many of you, but Haviv, I've got to let you know, we had affiliates every day, including today. We're welcoming WHEE in Martinsville, Virginia, AM 1370. So they won't know Haviv unless they've seen you on the Free Press or they've seen you on other media outlets. Can you give them just a brief capsule of who you are and what you do in Israel?
Sure. Born in Jerusalem, lived most of my life in Jerusalem, but a good 40% of my childhood, I think, was in the States because of my parents' work, so that's where the English is from. And I'm a journalist for about 20 years now, and that's basically the story. My work is basically translating what Israelis think and feel, what the Israeli experience is, because I have a native-born Hebrew, into English-speaking discussions and debates about what's going on. I don't have all the answers, but at least to make the debate a little bit richer and deeper. That's kind of
Since the invasion of Israel by Hamas and other terrorists on 10/7, you've devoted a lot of time to coming to the United States and talking to college campuses and Jewish groups and non-Jewish groups alike. You were here recently, I think. Am I right about that?
Yeah, last month.
Okay, so you've been able to watch America over these 2 years as well as Israel. I want to begin by asking you this. Next September, America will celebrate or commemorate the 25th anniversary of the attack on America on 9/11. We've forgotten a lot of the lessons of 25 years ago, and I know because I've been on the air 5 days a week for 25 years talking about this. Do you think Israel's going to forget 10/7 or the lessons of 10/7 in another 23 years?
No, I don't think Israel's going to forget it. Israel isn't America. It's not the size of a continent. It's not 350 million people. It's small. If Israel didn't have the competence it has, look, Israel's the only country with a competent, seriously powerful economy, right? I think our GDP passed Britain's, our GDP per capita. That doesn't have oil in the region. We're the only country that has a just serious, competent democracy with feedback loops and checks and, self-criticism and a free press in the region. And if we lose those abilities, those strengths, that ability to have a military that actually knows what it's doing, many of the Arab militaries are big and fancy and expensive, but can't fight because they are, in fact, just sort of hollowed out shells with oil money spent to buy Western weapons, but not serious training. They don't actually go to war. So we're a country that has a lot of very, very good strengths, but is tiny and has enemies who built out their entire ideological world on our destruction. There's so many parts to this Muslim Brotherhood network in the region, the Shia revolutionary ideology of Iran, that just think that as long as Israel exists, Islam will be down. The Jews are keeping the Muslim world down. All these kinds of ideologies that are genocidal ideologies that want to destroy us, and we have to stay strong and serious and competent, and they'd never let us forget it. So October 7 is what they would do to us if they could, and they must never be able to. That is, I think, the one thing all Israelis agree on.
Well, I used to think, and I think I said many times because I was broadcasting on 9/11, this is changing our country forever. We will never forget. And in fact, in the elections of 2002, less than a year and 2 months later, serious people triumphed in majorities in the Congress. George W. Bush triumphed again in 2004. But by 2006, we were war-weary. By 2008, it had worn off. There was also a financial crisis. President Obama won. President Obama pulled out of Iraq in 2011. We got ISIS. By 2020, we had total amnesia, and President Biden was elected, and he just pulled everyone out of Afghanistan and didn't think anything bad would happen. I don't know what happens if you take another holiday from history. We took a holiday from history, and we got whacked, and we brought ISIS on the world, and we may have led to 10/7. Certainly, President Trump makes that argument. Is there any chance at all that your people will forget what happened on 10/7?
No. The simple answer is no. But let me make a case for forgetfulness. Countries that are run by dictators and by ideologues with vast, world-conquering ideologies that they're willing to sacrifice their own people for, are countries that never forget. Never, they live in a myth. They force everyone to constantly be marching in lockstep. They oppress. They force everyone to have the same opinion. When you have a country that sees itself, its fundamental purpose, as the freedom of its own people, then ordinary people and the needs of ordinary people, the day-to-day, the simple, the local, triumphs always. Politics is always local is a famous phrase of American politics. But that's only true in America. That's not true in North Korea. In North Korea, all politics is whatever the leader wants it to be. And so you will always forget the traumas because you will always suddenly prioritize tomorrow morning sending all the kids to school and making sure that your economy's running right and all of that stuff. You will forget. And you know what? This happened to us in 1973 where we thought we were riding high and everything was fine and we had an economy to look after and the enemy surprised us. And 50 years later, it happened in 2023. And we thought everything was fine and the enemy was deterred and our basic job was to go into high tech and build fancy things. And the enemy surprised us. And we will be very strong and very vigilant. And then in a generation, maybe we will forget again because the fundamental purpose of the Israeli state and the Israeli people is a good life for ordinary people. And so democracies will always forget and the enemy will always come for them and they will always discover their strength and they will always rise up and show what only democracies are capable of. I don't know how to get away from it, but I also think that I'd rather be on my side of that than on the side that's constantly remembering, because that's
I would
ideology
also much rather be on our side, our shared side. I tell people in the audience every day, Israel is our greatest ally. They are the only superpower with whom we are allied that has the will and the intelligence to project power when necessary, and they have an arsenal that is at least second to none other than the United States and the People's Republic of China and Russia. And they've got very tough people running it. And as a result, they're our best ally. But I'm wondering about, for example, one thing I didn't foresee. You write for the Free Press. Today, Michael Duran, who's a very smart guy, has an article in the Free Press. The Jews, in quotes, are a proxy for a far bigger political fight. I did not anticipate the United States having an explosion of anti-Semitism after the state of Israel was savaged on 10/7. Did you? Did anyone that you know see that coming?
No. No, I think that shocked us completely. And the form it took, not criticism of Israel, but the idea that the Jews of Israel are the last living Jews in the Eastern Hemisphere. The 20th century was the emptying of 3 continents of Jews. Every last Jew left Baghdad. Baghdad was twice as Jewish in percentage as New York City in 1930 and is empty, totally empty of Jews. And then to come and say, oh, you Israelis, you last living Jews in the hemisphere, you should not exist. The form that it took, the obsession, when this obsessive discussion about the Gaza war is a terrible war. People should talk about it. Nobody should let anybody get away with, critique and a serious discussion around the world about a war that is urban warfare, that is painful, that has thousands of kids have died in Gaza. People should talk about it. But there is no other war that has seen a tenth of the explosion of absolute obsessive interest. And when you come to, people in America and you say, you're talking about Gaza, but there's a much worse war, 10 times worse in Sudan, in death toll, in starvation, actual mass starvation, which in Gaza was time limited and is over. But in Sudan, it's literally happening now at a vast, and nobody says a word. What is that about? And they tell you, well, we arm you, we fund you. And I don't believe it. And the reason I don't believe it is that's exactly the same thing is happening in Holland. And they don't fund us and arm us. Exactly the same thing's happening in the streets of London. Exactly the same thing is happening in Italy. They don't fund us. They don't arm us. They're not our allies. And so, no, this is a Western explosion of a hatred of Jews and wars that are worse happening now at this moment. More death toll, fought with Western weapons. Don't interest anybody. They're literally, and when you say it, they accuse you of whataboutism. But selective outrage isn't real outrage. Selective outrage is something else masquerading as outrage. And so the scale, by the way, and you have to also subtract from that real, actual, decent concern about Gaza, which is totally legitimate. But the scale of it, the ubiquity of it, the way it has reorganized politics in so much of the West is different, is new, takes explaining. And
pause right there. I will be back with Aviv. I spoke to Aviv from an hour before the show until 5 minutes before the show. It's a long interview. It's posted already over at my YouTube channel. If you wish to listen or watch it uninterrupted, go over to Hugh Hewitt YouTube, Google it. It will take you there. We posted it right away because we know a lot of you, especially on today, will want to hear from Haviv and not me or my other guests. I will play more of it throughout the program. Remind you that Haviv's own podcast, Ask Haviv Anything, is very popular around the world because it's very, very good. I encourage you to like and subscribe that, and I encourage you to like and subscribe my YouTube channel, Hugh Hewitt at YouTube. Comfortably Smug joining me. He's one of the fellas from the Ruthless podcast. Smug, I begin with a confession. I have normally always listened to the latest Ruthless podcast before I talk to a Ruthless cast member. However, today I had Haviv Reddy Gur on, and he'll be back later in the program to talk about 10-7. So I don't even know if today you got to this ridiculous, absurd story of Jack Smith instituting surveillance on our senators. Did you guys get to that?
We didn't get to that one yet.
All right, so I get the initial smug reaction. What do you think about America's Beria deciding to follow and surveil a dozen senators?
So I think everyone would be in agreement that it's completely unacceptable. I think the question here remains is what will be done about it? Because we've now reached a point where Democrats openly spied on President Trump. That's all become common knowledge and accepted by the public. We've all seen it. We've dealt with this fact for years now. But the fact that now is so common because, you know, Democrats would often try to portray it as, oh, Trump is like the singular problem and anything is okay as long as it's against Trump. But now it's against Republican senators, number of Republican senators. What needs to be done is there have to be consequences for this. And I think I'm happy to hear Republican senators say that, oh, you know, this is outrageous. But what will you do about this? I think there's a significant number of, especially grassroots conservatives, who are wondering, well, you know, would you look at that? It's Democrats doing something awful again and zero arrests resulting from it. So I want to see some actions actually be done about this.
So, Smug, what do you think? My suggestion, and I've made it to the leadership, is that they stand up a select committee with our smartest lawyers, Cotton, Cruz, Hawley, Mike Lee. There are a bunch of them. And you don't make it a charade committee like the J6 fix, but you let the Democrats appoint whoever they want. They get to hire their minority counsel, and they dive in right away, and they get subpoena power, and they get Merrick Garland up there, and they get Jack Smith, and they get Christopher Wray. Because this is an attack by Article 2 on Article 1 by a zealot. I mean, a Javert, a crazy man.
Yeah.
You know, they actually surveilled Bill Haggerty. He'd been our ambassador to Japan. It's nuts.
That's the thing, is it became such a commonplace thing for Democrats to do. This is far worse than anything that happened in Watergate, and you had a president resign needlessly over that. And so I think that'd be a great start. I 100% think so. But I just have started to become of the sentiment that whenever you have Congress setting up select committees and then all this, and then the end result is someone gets censured, and I think this has to result in punishments that make it untenable to ever do anything like this again in the future. I'd like to see somebody in handcuffs, because that's the only deterrent, is when people's freedom is taken away from them, they stop doing that behavior.
Well, the reason I'm so sold on the Senate is because we've got the Senate for 3.5 years. I don't think we can lose the Senate if we tried. We might try, but I don't think we. And people who lie in front of the Senate end up in handcuffs because of if you have the DOJ and the Senate and you have subpoena power, you can immunize the witness. They have to talk. If they lie, they've perjured themselves or made a false statement. But I don't know that you could trust the FBI to investigate or the DOJ to prosecute after these 4 years. Do you?
No,
I mean, I trust Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, but nobody else.
That's the horrific thing, is that, you know, we talk about how you see all this polling of how Americans have lost faith in institutions. And I think it starts more that the institutions lost faith in Americans and started acting completely independently, as if they're kings more than people who are supposed to be put in administrative positions serving the American people. So I am not surprised at all by people wondering if the FBI or the Justice Department could be trusted, when we'd for years seen, you know, members of the FBI saying we're going to do everything we can to prevent Donald Trump from getting elected. They see themselves as knowing better than American voters and trying to interfere in elections in the United States, which, ostensibly they took an oath to defend. So, I mean, I share your doubts in all of that. It's just, I think that a prime example would be like what has happened in Washington, D.C., where President Trump simply took action, right? It's a town literally defined by bureaucracy, and he cut around all of that, and he said, we're just not going to have crime anymore. That's it. He just took the steps to make it happen, and everyone can see plain as day a result of that. I think actions speak far louder than, okay, now we're going to have a congressional hearing on things, because Americans have seen plenty of that, and nothing has resulted in them.
What we need is a predicate to charge people. And the predicate requires a false statement under oath. Or, I think when you make a special counsel like Jack Smith, you're essentially putting them beyond the law, and you give them an unlimited budget. He can hire as many prosecutors as he wants, spend as much money as he wants, and the FBI goes along. I don't know that we'll get anything out of the FBI, and they can run the clock for 3.5 years, Smug. Do you have any doubt in your mind that they can run the clock out for 3.5 years?
None. I mean, that's one of the ways that bureaucracy wins is they always play the long game. I mean, they keep government official records in a cave. These are not people who are, very judicious about trying to make sure things are done on time.
So that means the only way to get this done, I really do think, is by Leader Thune picking his absolute attack dog lawyers and going after everybody on 5-day-a-week hearing schedule, because we will run out of time. Now, my second question, this is a glimpse into the Bureau and the DOJ. It confirms all of my worst fears. Do you think in the room when Hegseth brought everyone in, how many of those generals and admirals, I'm not worried about their fitness. You get to be 55, you might put on a couple of pounds unless you're in special ops. How many of them do you think are political in that they have views on Trump that military officers ought not to have?
I mean, I think that's a great question. All I could speak on is the results that I have seen published in terms of the effect that Secretary Hegseth and President Trump have had since President Trump took over this administration, since President Trump was elected president. And you're hearing the armed service branches have hit record goals for enlistment. I would say that the military is excited to have this kind of leadership. I think the media is trying to do whatever they can to try to portray some kind of a situation as if, it's chaos at the Pentagon, when you're seeing more Americans than ever are willing to step forward because under Secretary Hegseth and President Trump's direction, the military is completely focused on a singular goal of, we are war fighters and we're in this to win this. I think even changing the name to the War Department instead of, the Department of Defense also further highlights that it's a goal-oriented, focused mission, not about mission creep and we do all these other things and nation building, whatever. I would say that I'm less concerned with, is there some general who might be willing to go off the record and say something to the New York Times or Politico or the Washington Post than the result of seeing more Americans than ever are stepping forward and signing up and excited to join the armed forces.
Well, I am too. Smug, good to see you as always. I'll be catching up on my Ruthless Variety program tonight and tomorrow because it's now 3 days a week, not 2 days a week. You can't sleep on Ruthless. Thank you for joining me. Follow Smug at Comfortably Smug on X. Earlier today, about an hour and a half ago, I caught up with Aviv Redigur in Israel on the second anniversary of the massacre of 10/7. We had a long conversation. It's posted over at my YouTube channel. If you want to watch the whole thing uninterrupted, here's part 2. You mentioned 1973, and prior to 10/7, Israel had what I've learned to pronounce as the concepcia in both cases, and it was wrong. What if Israel's concepcia about the United States always being a liberal democracy open to the Jewish people from around the world to come and live and thrive as they always have in our soon-to-be 250th birthday year? What if that's going to change? Is Israel prepared for that, for sort of a constant eruption of anti-Semitic violence, not just in Manchester where the synagogue was attacked this past week, but all across the United States where Jews have been under attack for 2 years?
Yes, Israel's prepared. Israel does not have such a concepcia. That's, by the way, obviously borrowing the word concept from English, but it's specifically used to mean an assumption that everyone holds to and turns out to be wrong catastrophically. That's what it has come to mean in Hebrew. I'll put it real simple. The founders of Zionism in the 19th century argued that there are these processes of nationalism and processes of collapse into populism that are going to turn all of these liberal Western countries like Germany and France at the time, they're going to turn viciously on their minorities. And first and foremost, but not only on the Jews, and the Jews have to get out or there'll be a catastrophe. That's the word Herzl used. And for the next century, history proved Herzl correct. Everywhere on earth, except in the English-speaking world, mostly in the United States, America was the exception to the Zionist expectation of collapse and catastrophe for all minorities, but also specifically for Jews. And the American Jewish experience, American Jews are the other half of the Jews. The Israelis are about 50% of Jews. American Jews are about 45% of all Jews. Those millions of Jews in America for a century spent basically just experiencing American liberalism, integration, unbelievable acceptance to the point where they actually became Americans. And I know that sounds obvious to your listeners, but no Jew in the Russian Empire for centuries was allowed to think that they're Russian. No Jew in Germany ever thought they were German for very long before the Germans explained to them that they were not. America was the first serious place where Jews became integrated to the point where they simply were the actual people. And that is a new experience in Jewish history. That's the greatest compliment any nation could ever receive in all of history, is the Jewish experience of America in the story of American Jews. So the conception in this particular case, Israelis have actually been surprised over the generations that America was as amazing and wonderful and beautiful as it was. The Jews could give so much to it and receive so much from it. And American Jews are the ones who stand shocked and the ones who are destabilized by what they have seen and the ideologies that have now come in from Europe, from the Muslim world, and begun to destabilize the liberal order within American society.
Pause it there. We'll come back. I've got to do some work here. Number one, I got to take my relief factor because I got my 10K in this morning, and it's the first time in 4 days that I had done anything like that. So I'm probably going to feel a little bit tomorrow, and that's okay because I got my carrying curcumin, resveratrol, and omega, and every day. In the first hour of the show, I take it on air. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you see me do it. You can hear me do it. If you're listening, if you're new, if you're one of our new listeners on WEEE in Martinsville, Virginia, Talk of the Town in Martinsville, Virginia, AM 1370, realize you're going to hear that every hour of every day of every Hugh Hewitt show because I really believe in Relief Factor, and I encourage you to call 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF. I try and get my miles in between 20 and 30 every single week. I'm a little bit behind this week, but I'll catch up by Saturday evening. And I am hoping that you will all do the same thing with Relief Factor. Call 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief. Ask for the starter pack, $19.95. It's a 3-week supply, less than $1 a day. You take 3 packets a day for the first week, 2 packets a day for the second week, 1 packet a day for the third week, and your levels will be up and your anti-inflammatory system strong and you'll feel great. Or go to relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. I also have another sponsor called the American Exploration and Production Council, axpc.org, axpc.org. I talk a lot on this program for my new listeners about permit reform, which is not sexy at all, but is absolutely vital to America winning the energy race with China, remaining free and strong. Energy is freedom. We've got to go unlock it. That means permit reform. The American Exploration and Production Council makes that permit reform possible. Common sense reform, cutting bureaucracy, not environmental safeguards. The stakes could not be higher. Our economy and our energy dominance depend upon permitting reform. See the plan for yourself at axpc.org. That's axpc.org. We need it, and we need it fast. Maybe we need it in the appropriations bills being negotiated. axpc.org. To our brand new audience at WHEE, Talk of the Town, 1370 in Martinsville, Virginia. Welcome. One of our regulars is David Drucker, senior political analyst for The Dispatch. David, the story that has me most bothered today is the story that Jack Smith was surveilling United States senators, including rookies like Bill Hagerty, who had been our ambassador to Japan. What in the world was that? What was going to happen in response to that?
Well, I mean, I think we're going to have to find out more about it, Hugh, how extensive it was or not. what exactly they were after, how long what kind of surveillance it was, and how long it lasted. And I think that I don't think Washington has been aware of the facts long enough and is aware of enough specifics yet to have come to some conclusion. And of course, as you know, there's a government shutdown underway. I don't have to tell you, the House of Representatives is not in session, so you have one half of Congress that isn't here. But I expect we'll hear more about this in the coming days.
So the Senate is there, and I've been very vocal about my view that Leader Thune ought to set up a select committee and put the best lawyers that the Republicans have, like Cotton and Cruz and Hawley and Mike Lee, and there are a bunch of others, and put them on that select committee and drill down and do it tomorrow. Because the idea of Article 2 people, especially special counsels, doing any amount of surveillance on the elected Senate sends chills up and down my spine. We've never seen anything like that. It's unprecedented.
Well, I mean, look, this is your area of expertise more than it is mine, right? I mean, I tend to look at the politics of this, and I'm not sure that this is going to have political legs either way. However, if Leader Thune follows your advice, it's going to get a lot more attention. I think the question is I think the question here is whether Republican leaders in the Senate believe this is as egregious as you do, right? And if they do, if they look at the facts and they agree, then I expect we'll be hearing more about it. It may be one of those things where we find out things like this were done before in some fashion, and it's just not something they want to dig into. But again, I'm speculating here because we haven't had enough time to digest the information and really figure out where this is going.
I'm going to talk with Eric Schmidt and Joni Ernst later in the program. I will ask them. But all I've seen, and I think it's an enormous amount of outrage online, and I don't think it's AstroTurf. I think people are really astonished that it's a list of 7 or 9 senators. And Marsha Blackburn, it makes absolutely no sense what he was thinking of, whatever he was thinking of. I think Jack Smith was an ideologue from day one, and that Merrick Garland had no idea what kind of a Roy Cohn he was, and he turned out to be that. Have we seen anything of him since he quit before he got fired?
No, we haven't, Hugh. But this is the issue with special counsels, and when we used to have this is the issue with special prosecutors, I should say, and especially when we used to have the special counsel law, which has since expired, as you know, is that they have these sort of open-ended purviews that are not supposed to be open-ended, but in effect are open-ended, and their investigations can last for years. They can go in all sorts of directions, even directions that were not intended. I think it's one of the reasons why Congress allowed the special counsel law to expire. 20 years ago now?
Yeah, the independent counsel law as opposed to special counsel regs. But I guarantee you, David, I do teach this stuff. Not one of the independent counsels or special counsels under the law before and after independent counsel law ever surveilled members of Congress. We have surveilled 1 or 2 and we thought they were crooked. Found the money in the freezer. We found corruption here and there. We got Wilbur Mills, of course. But they never as a pattern. It's just unprecedented in American history. And so maybe I'm reacting as a student of that, but I just am shocked. And I didn't like Jack Smith ever, but I didn't know he had ambitions to, book him, Dano, for every member of the Senate he didn't like.
Well, listen, I mean, again, as I understand, this had to do with his investigation into January 6th and how all of that unfolded. But again, I need more information to be able to give you some political commentary on this, and we need to see, really how much of the public really becomes aware of this and where they rank it. I mean, there are so many issues that are constantly put before the voting public here. Every poll I've seen, since the president was inaugurated, is that affordability, inflation are number 1, crime, public safety, illegal immigration, border enforcement number 2. Sometimes those are flipped. And everything else, whether it's Democrats screaming about executive overreach by the president, or Republicans with gripes that they have about how Democrats are handling things, it's not that it doesn't register or voters aren't aware. They're just not taking it into account so much in terms of what their priority is in terms of what they want lawmakers to focus on.
All right, write it down. It's day one. It's 10/7. It's a day we won't forget anyway. I think it's going to be a big deal, a very big deal indeed. David, I also think that Chuck Schumer is getting hammered. Today's Wall Street Journal had a headline, Trump negotiating. Then you read 3 paragraphs down, he's not negotiating. No one's the Republicans don't care if this goes on forever because Democrats are blowing themselves up. What do you hear on the Democratic side?
Well, I think Democrats have dug in, right? And once you get past the first week of a shutdown, everybody digs in. But Republicans clearly feel like they have the political upper hand here, and I don't see any polling that suggests they don't. Even if this thing's neutral, they certainly aren't behind the 8 ball, and they're using the very effective playbook that Democrats used against them for years, which is,
Yes.
hey, we'd love to negotiate, just reopen the government. I don't know why we have to hold the government hostage to have a legislative negotiation. I mean, this used to hammer Republicans left and right, but the Democratic base wants a fight. This is the only way they really can have a fight with Trump because they don't have not any material power in Washington, although they have the power of the filibuster on legislation. And so I think they're going to do this for a while, if and until the polling gets really bad or all of a sudden the public starts to deliver a rebuke for the negative impacts of the shutdown. But 1 week in, nobody's really felt it, and everybody is still content to live in it.
Do you remember the name Chuck Wepner?
I do remember the name, but I can't place wwhy I remember.
He was
the
a
name.
tomato can of a boxer, and Chuck Schumer is the Chuck Wepner of this fight. And he was also a bleeder. I don't think Chuck Schumer's a bleeder, but Chuck Wepner was the guy he always went to get in shape for the big bout. He could surprise occasionally, but I don't think Chuck Schumer's got it in him. David M. Drucker on X and over at the Dispatch. Thank you for joining me, David. Welcome to the program. I shouldn't be so mean to Chuck Wepner. He was a fine fighter. He won 36, I think, of his 50-odd bouts. I remember him because he went up against Ali in Richfield Coliseum outside of Cleveland in 1975, and he almost went the distance with Ali. Ali got paid $1.5 million. Wepner got paid $100,000. He was called the Bayonne Bleeder because he took a lot of stitches, hundreds of stitches. But he's also a Marine. I believe he's alive. A Bayonne Bleeder leads me to believe he's in Louisiana somewhere. If you're listening, Mr. Wepner, you almost took Ali the distance, which not a lot of people did. Let me talk to you about the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. In the next 2 hours, you'll hear more of my interview with Haviv Rettig-Gur. I would recommend you listen to all of it over at my YouTube channel if you've missed part of it. But I'll be bringing 3, 4, 5, and 6 to you in the next 2 hours so that people hear it a bit in every hour. I do want you to know that right now we are sponsoring, along with the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, a fundraiser for the needy in Israel. It's been 2 long years of war. There are a lot of people who are out of money and out of cash. As you heard Haviv say, a lot of people have lost their businesses. A lot of people are simply out of cash and need food assistance. The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews steps up. You can call 800-492-1717 to make a contribution, 800-492-1717, or visit my website at hughhewitt.com. There's a toolbar at the top. And if you hit that, you'll make a very secure tax-deductible donation to our friends and allies in Israel. Thank you in advance for being generous on this 2nd anniversary of the massacre. Let me also tell you that today, as the market's about to close, I want to bring up andrewandtodd.com. The 10-year Treasury is down to 4.132. It's fallen for 3 days in a row, and Friday, Monday, Tuesday. And I believe the 30-year fixed rate for a mortgage has fallen as well. But to find out what your mortgage rate will be, you need to call Andrew and Todd. Andrew and Todd, 888-888-1172, or go to andrewandtodd.com. They're a mortgage lender, all right? They lend you the money. So if you start with Andrew and Todd, you'll end with Andrew and Todd. There's no pass off to a third person. They open the file. They underwrite the loan. They work with the underwriter to make sure that you qualify. They tell you how much money you can borrow. They don't want to oversell you. You don't want to buy too much house and be house poor. They want to make sure you get the best rate possible. There's a big spread right now between the 15 and the 30-year rate. They'll walk through all of that. If you're a veteran, you don't want to put any money down, andrewandtodd.com, 888-888-1172. If you're a first-time home buyer and you have no idea what you're doing, you really need Andrew Del Rey or Todd Avakian at andrewandtodd.com, 888-888-1172. And if you're a senior citizen and you want a reverse mortgage so you can get money out of your house but never make another mortgage payment, they are great with that too. AndrewandTodd.com, or simply call them at 888-888-1172, 888-888-1172. Tell Andrew Del Rey or Todd Avakian that Hugh sent you. They've done loans for thousands of people in my audience over 25 years. Thank you for patronizing them and coming back for hour 2 of the Hugh Hewitt Show. Senator Schmidt, and then Habib Reddy Gore coming up. Joined by Senator Eric Schmidt of the great state of Missouri. Senator, welcome back. I've been plugging your book, The Last Line of Defense, and my appearances on Fox, because all of a sudden your chapter on your case against what became Murthy, but it wasn't the original one you filed. It came to pass that they have to pay up, and I was glad and I was celebrating for you. I hope that everyone noticed that you were there first.
I did see that. And actually the interview that we got a chance to do, I appreciate it because you had read the book. It was very substantive, and there's a lot to tell, obviously, in the book, but especially about that censorship regime we uncovered. And it really was Orwellian. It really was.
Well, speaking of Orwellian, we're going to get there, but I noticed that you've got a Chiefs helmet behind you. They choked last night. The Browns have the Jaguars' first-round draft pick, and I did not appreciate that. Why would the Chiefs choke against the Jaguars? I don't know.
I don't know. It's probably too soon. But by the way,
let's get to the outrage of the day.
Yes,
they're in the SEC, aren't they? Yeah.
Yes, and they're playing Alabama at home. Your 14th-ranked Tigers are playing the number 8-ranked Crimson Tide in Columbia, Missouri. So upset alert.
Well, when you get up to
alert.
Single digits, then you get to play the Big Ten. When you get to single digits, and when you get to
you got like one team.
And when you get
what are you talking about? You got like one team.
Yeah, we probably do only have one team, but it's we got two. Oregon's pretty good. Senator, I want to turn very, very, very serious. An American Javert, really an American Beria, anointed himself the surveiller of the Senate. And I was going to talk to you about the shutdown, but these records of the FBI surveilling senators have got my con law professor head spinning around. It's never happened in our 250 years. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, this makes Watergate. This is like Watergate's 1/1000th, I think, of this scandal. And if you had an honest legacy media, they would cover this. Watergate took down a president, and here you had. And what I tried to do in the hearing today with Pam Bondi is this stuff's been uncovered. So yes, Jack Smith subpoenaed the phone records, tapped the phones of 8 U.S. senators. By the way, also did that with the Republican Attorneys General Association. I was the chairman at the time. Ashley Moody was on the executive board, so pull in 2 more U.S. senators that were involved in this effort. It really was this. It began with Russiagate. That was a hoax. They tried to sideline the presidency. Then you got the FBI then working on pre-bunking the Hunter Biden laptop story. We took Elvis Chan's deposition in the book Last Line of Defense, by the way. You had that. And then once Biden comes in, 3 days later, they start this censorship regime, and they start spying on U.S. senators, and they start, subpoenaing the records of organizations like Turning Point with Charlie Kirk. We've never seen anything like this whole thing. This is like Soviet-style justice in the United States of America. So what do I think should happen? I mentioned in the hearing today. I think personally, the statute of limitations runs on some of this stuff, but not on a conspiracy. So if you're part of the conspiracy in mile marker 1, even though you take an exit ramp on mile marker 5, you are still liable for that conspiracy at mile marker 10, and we're at mile marker 10. And so I would expect to see more charges, probably in line with a vast conspiracy, conspiracy against rights, conspiracy against the United States, that would involve certainly Comer, Clapper, Brennan, a lot of folks, and Jack Smith. At a minimum, ought to be disbarred, but there ought to be prosecutions here. I actually think what we should do is really spend the time, have a joint committee, the Senate, the House, or maybe like a after Watergate kind of hearing where we really get into what they did, because the Democrats, Hugh, are claiming that Trump's weaponizing the DOJ, and I tried to make the point today. Biden's DOJ was weaponized not just against Trump, but his supporters, Catholics, you name it. They went after their political enemies. Going after and making those people accountable is not the same thing. That is not a weaponization. That is going after the people who weaponized, and that's where we're at right now, and I hope that's what comes next.
Well, my suggestion, I'll write it up in a Fox column for Thursday, is that Leader Thune announced a select committee, like the Watergate Select Committee, that it be a real select committee, and we put onto it people like you and Senator Hawley, former Attorney General, people like Ted Cruz and Tom Cotton and Mike Lee, great lawyers. You hire a great lead counsel. You let the Democrats pick their 3 or 4, whoever they want. I don't care. We don't do a J6 show committee. We actually have a committee, and we do Watergate Committee 2.0, and you bring them all up and you immunize who you have to, but we get going and we go fast. I love the Judiciary Committee. You guys do great work. But some members are not lawyers, and some of them, I've never been a prosecutor. I don't know how to prosecute anything. You do. I would like to see prosecutorial focus brought to bear on Mr. Smith, his staff, and I don't know what Chris Wray was doing. Was he asleep? But what was Merrick Garland doing? This is truly without precedent in the history of the Republic, I think. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do, and I like your idea. I would also say, too, that it really, we can't allow this to happen. The Democrats never forgave Trump for coming down the escalator. And they have never come to grips with the lengths at which they went to break the law and break all these constitutional norms to get Trump. I mean, you got to remember also that after they thought Trump was gone and they were going after his allies, 3 days after he announced he was running for president, and Jack Smith gets appointed special counsel. You've got the number 3 person at DOJ go to Alvin Bragg's office. You've got the assistant district attorney in Atlanta meeting with the White House counsel's office. All these cases were meant to put him in prison for the rest of his life and bankrupt his family. I mean, they were hell-bent on it. And by the way, if Biden or Harris would have won, we wouldn't know any of this stuff, Hugh. All this stuff would still be buried in burn bags in the FBI headquarters, right? And so now the disruptors are in, they're exposing it. But you're right, we need to do more with it.
Well, I want people who are serious about getting to the answers as to, because there's a chain of custody of the unconstitutionality. Somebody comes up with the idea of wiretapping, or I'm not sure they wiretapped you, but did they surveil you? Is that what it was?
Well, what we know right now, what we know right now, based on a briefing yesterday, is that they had sort of call logs, knowing who people called, who was calling them, and the location. But it could be, because this has just been uncovered, it could be a lot more than that. It could be electronic communications. It could be potentially the contents of the call. We'll find out. There's also a question here with the carriers, the phone companies that actually agreed to turn over these documents. I mean, it's totally insane and unprecedented, as you said. So I think there's a lot more questions based on the recent revelations from Arctic Frost that deserve answers. And like I said, ultimately accountability.
Is there anything that connects the 8 senators who are named, plus you and Attorney General Bondi? Now, I mean, not Bondi, but Ashley Moody. Is there anything that connects you 10 together? I mean, why would they pick?
Well, this was
10?
done under the auspices. Yeah, this was done under the auspices of January 6th, as everything was, right? They had felt like they had license to go break the law and do this massive roundup. I mean, that's what they're saying. And so, you know, it really was in many ways a predicate for them to do things that are unprecedented in this country. Like I said,
do we even know, Senator? Do we even know how many people work for Jack Smith? Do we know how many lawyers he put on his payroll?
I don't know. I don't know the exact number, but I think I saw a $50 million price tag.
That's the price tag.
$50 million was spent on this. It's crazy.
So, you know, if I'm king of the world, not queen, not duke, not earl, I begin with the junior member on his staff and begin working my way up as to finding out where, and then over to the Bureau. And Patel and Bongino will give you help, won't they?
Yeah, and by the way, this most recent revelation for Arctic Frost came from a whistleblower, came from somebody on the inside. So there are people in the FBI, I'm sure, that were very uncomfortable with what was happening, and you want to make sure that they have the ability to come forward and get their statements and then follow up on that. That's how an investigation would work. And I think we ought to do all that. We said we can't let this go by, Hugh. This isn't some small thing. I mean, it's hard to think of a bigger thing.
It's huge.
Yeah.
You're too young to remember, but in the summer of 1973, I'm in summer school in Warren, Ohio, and because we had a coach as a teacher, he just rolled the TV in and we watched the Watergate hearing. The world learned everything, right? That's the way you do it, is you put them. But it's got to be our smart people. It's got to be our best lawyers, not people who are looking to run for anything, but our best lawyers. So I hope you go to the conference. When does the conference get together next?
Well, we're together every lunch. So, but yeah, there's some conversations about this. I will say that the very smart lawyer Hugh Hewitt made the suggestion, and he's right. So,
Well, I'm not a prosecutor, but I did stay at Holiday Inn recently, so I'm hoping that we find the bottom of it. To the benefit of the audience, the last line of defense becomes more and more relevant every day. It's Eric Schmidt's brand new book. You want to read up on how the censorship enterprise, as he called it, I love that term, got started and got underway. Well done today, Senator, and thank you for joining me. Don't go anywhere, America. I'm coming back with Aviv Reddy-Gur, Part 3 on this, the second anniversary of the massacre of 10/7. Aviv joined me a couple hours ago from Israel to review a lot of things, including the explosion of anti-Semitism in the United States. Special welcome to our brand new audience in Martinsville, Virginia, on WHEE 1370 AM, the talk of the town. One of the things I do is check in with our friends in Israel, Dr. Michael Oren, former ambassador to Israel, to the United States from Israel, and with Aviv Reddy-Gur, one of the rising stars of Israeli journalism. I caught up with Aviv before the show today, spoke to him for almost an hour. Here's part 3 of that conversation. And that's what I'm getting at. We saw in Manchester was just the most deadly of the overtaking of the English-speaking world by anti-Semitic fanaticism. It's in the United States as well. I can't imagine it, but I'm an older guy, you're a younger guy. I can't imagine it reaching any kind of significant point in the United States, despite all the talk of Trump being an authoritarian and a dictator and all that nonsense. It's not in our bones. We're not that ideological of people, but you've got to be worried about it, don't you, given the trend in Britain and given demographics?
I don't want to look. Talking to you, Hugh, it feels a little chutzpahdik, as we say in Yiddish, to talk to you about America. But let me try and suggest a Jew's eye view of this, if that's worth anything. America is turning. There is in America a sense of real, profound social crisis. The CDC has mapped this terrible loneliness crisis. Kids are radicalizing online in insane and genuinely weird ways, which is something we learned after the Charlie Kirk murder. I mean, people were following this for a long time, but it really kind of drove it home to everybody. And there's a lot of sense of instability. And we're finding basically a kind of anti-Semitism rising on the right that takes explaining. In other words, Tucker Carlson bringing on a historian who wants you to know that Hitler really was misunderstood. And then it turns out also puts out tweets that say that Jews never accepted Christ because they hate humanity. And just this constant spewing of conspiracy, of insane conspiracy theories about Jews.
Candace Owens being Exhibit 1, right?
Right, but these people have millions and millions of viewers, and Ian Carroll going on Joe Rogan, and everybody's just thinking this is normal. That talk about Jewish space lasers is something that is not unreasonable. I mean, everybody laughed, but not everybody laughed. A lot of people nodded. And what is it? And I want to suggest to you that there is in America a Christian tradition, the Great Awakening. People should just look up type Great Awakening into ChatGPT. Okay, I don't know if Google works anymore. Type it into ChatGPT, and you will learn about these Christian restorationists, this beautiful Protestantism that would pitch tents all through the colonies in the 1730s and 40s, and preach a kind of individualistic, freedom-loving Christianity. In the tent would be wealthy white people and literally slaves in the tent together as equals in this Great Awakening kind of Jonathan Edwards, if people remember from high school. It was this movement that, because America had what Washington called the tyranny of distance, it was just enormous and hard to actually traverse. But these evangelists almost traversed it. And they traveled the colonies and almost created a shared religious conversation that created a shared American identity out of these very disparate kinds of colonies, disparate cultures. And George Washington, when he's already the first president, he grew up in that Christian world. And it's a world of liberation, and it's a world of individualism, and it's a world of freedom, and it's a world that you can't understand the revolution and America without it. What the Tucker Carlsons are doing now, in this moment of crisis and sense of civilizational and social rot and decline and real danger, I mean, really, like, people are not happy. Americans are not happy people anymore. That's what the data tells us. They're actually suffering from this social collapse. And the answer that a lot of people like Candace Owens and like Tucker Carlson are offering is not modeled on the Great Awakening. It's modeled on the Muslim Brotherhood. It's modeled on a similar process happening in the 19th and early 20th centuries in the Muslim world, where they looked around, they saw their weakness, they saw a kind of civilizational decline. It was a religious crisis because Islam should be on top, it should be conquering, it should be powerful, but the British Empire had just taken over Egypt very easily, and the Ottoman Empire was being dismantled by the European powers, and the response was this religious kind of return to restorationism, this old piety, this old, if we were like the early generations of Islam, pious and originalist, and Islam will give us all the answers, and we turn to Islam for everything. That Muslim Brotherhood organization, founded in the 20s in Egypt, that had that view, that we go back to this to this early Islam, and that early Islamic piety has everything, produced the Muslim Brotherhood, which produced Hamas as its chapter in Gaza in 1987. It also, Sayyid Qutb is one of the great heroes of that movement, writers of that movement, who produced Al-Qaeda from his writings. It produced violence, it produced brutality. It was a restorationism that blamed everybody else, that blamed a weakening of Islamic belief for creating this husk, this shell into which foreign empires, foreign ideas, foreign ideologies could step in. And by the way, the greatest enemy number one in the Muslim Brotherhood's world is the Jews. And what Tucker Carlson argues about, he had this interview recently in which he said, the great churches of America are a hollowed out husk, and the woke walked into this hollowed out husk and inhabited it like raccoons. And who is the great enemy driving the civilizational decline? Who do they pretend invented porn? Who do they, to destroy young people, to destroy sexual ethics? Who do they claim it created mass immigration? The Jews. And so they are creating exactly the playbook of 100 years ago in Egypt of the Muslim Brotherhood. And they're taking a Christianity that they're trying to drive this kind of return to Christianity, but it's not the old American version. It's this new violent, brutal version that has enemies that's going to go out there and do violence. And I suggest to you
that has
yes,
no
America's-
chance of working because I got to say a word in defense of Tucker, who I've known forever. I've tried to keep up on what has offended people, and I don't quite know what Tucker believes. I don't believe he's a Candace Owen, and I think he platforms people that I would never platform. But I don't think he is a Katoub in waiting to spring upon the country. And I know that Charlie was very pro-Israel, and that almost everyone in the conservative movement is very pro-Israel. I worry actually about the Islamist effect throughout the United States within not off-the-track Christians, but on-track Wahhabists. I've recommended the book The Looming Tower as many times as I have said my own name on this show, because it does explain Katoub and Under the Banyan Tree and all the other milestones, all the books that he wrote. And I want people to be aware. We don't want that in the United States. But let's pause there. I do want to remind everyone it is 10/7. And over at HughHewitt.com, there is a banner at the top of HughHewitt.com where you can make a donation to the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews on this day. It's one thing to talk a good game. It's another thing to make a contribution to an organization on the ground in Israel, helping out the people who have been hurt the most, who have lost the most, who are struggling the most in the 2 years now since the invasion of 10/6. If you head over to the International Fellowship of Christian and Jews banner, it's very secure. Your donation is tax deductible. 25, 50, 100, 1,000, whatever you can give, we thank you. Or you can call 800-492-1717, 800-492-1717, 800-492-1717. I know from my subtext, I have the universe. If you remember the universe, you can text me during the show. And I know some of you are not happy that I'm breaking up the Haviv Reddy Gur interview. But it's already posted at my YouTube channel if you want to just go over there and listen to it uninterrupted. It will also be on tonight's podcast that Harley will post. When you go to YouTube, I would appreciate it if you liked and subscribed, became a member, and just you don't pay anything for that. We just send you the videos, like the 55-minute interview with Haviv Reddy Gore or the interview with Senator Schmidt. We put up between 3 and 6 a day, and you don't have to watch them, but if you want to be smart, you do. Haviv is best listened to uninterrupted, and he's best interviewed uninterrupted. And that's why I do it the way that I do it. I wanted to explain that to you. Also want to tell you about two of our sponsors, Webroot and Consumer Cellular. They kind of go together. One's going to save your data, and one's going to save you money. Let me start with webroot.com/Hewitt. You are probably online a lot every day. Every moment you're online, and indeed those times you leave your computer or your devices unattended but turned on, you're vulnerable. You're vulnerable to advanced hacking. You're vulnerable to malware. You're vulnerable to phishing. You're vulnerable. Every time you open up your email and you say, well, is that really my wife? And you click on it, you've been phished. And you're now sucked in and malware is placed on your computer. You really cannot afford to go naked into the virtual world. That's why you need webroot.com/Hewitt. They have two packages. They have Webroot Total Protection and they have Webroot Essentials. There are lots of features of both of these, from things everyone knows about: firewall, network monitor, real-time antivirus protection, advanced dark web monitoring, where they get on the dark web ahead of you and they look for all their members. They run all their members' names through the dark web to see what's going on. You get a VPN for 5 or 10 devices. You can manage your VPN connection with split tunneling. I don't even know what that means, but I know I want it. Webroot.com/Hewitt. That's Webroot Total Protection. If you want a lower end of it, Webroot Essentials has got key features. You can get a protection for 1 device, 3 devices, or 5 devices. Again, the antivirus protection, lightning fast scans without interruption, firewall network monitor. It works with Edge, Chrome, Firefox, System Optimizer to make your experience online as productive, healthy, and safe as possible. Live a better digital life with Webroot. Webroot.com/Hewitt. Now, the cell phone. My cell phone is in orange. Goodbye, Joe Flacco. Traded to the Bengals today. I guess we think Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, 2 rookies, are good enough for the rest of the year. We're going to find out whether we have to draft a rookie in the first round next year. That's fine. Go win some games, Browns. In the meantime, you need to save some money. Now, unless you're someone who watches a lot of NFL games streaming over your phone, chances are you do not need the amount of data that you are buying from big web, from big cellular. They want to sell you an unlimited data plan that's very expensive. And a lot of seniors, especially, and a lot of people over 50 get that because they don't want to get a surprise bill. They'd rather know what they're getting every month. Well, have you gotten your phone bill out recently? Have you looked at how much you're paying for data? Have you looked at how much data you're buying? Please do so. And then call 1-800-411-4454. 1-800-411-4454. That's 1-800-411-4454. Because Consumer Cellular will save you money. And I tell you about it every day because I know how big my audience is. It's millions of you. And I know a lot of you think every day, I'm going to do that. I'm going to get my phone bill out and find out how much I'm paying for data. Well, unless you're paying less than $60 a month for 2 lines of unlimited data, if you're 50 years and older, then you need to call Consumer Cellular at 1-800-411-4454. It makes sense anyway. It takes less than 20 minutes to change cell providers. Really, less than 20 minutes. But you got to call first. 1-800-411-4454 and tell them Hewitt sent you, or go to consumercellular.com/Hugh. Finally, Relief Factor. I'm in the Relief Factor studio for my new affiliate down in Martinsville, Virginia, WHEE 1370, talk of the town. You're going to hear a lot about Relief Factor because I run a lot of miles, or I trundle a lot of miles, or I walk a lot of miles whenever it's not raining. I refuse to go out in the rain anymore. I used to do that when I was 20 and 30, but not anymore. But I take Relief Factor every day because I want to get my miles in. I want to stay in good shape. I want to be able to go as far as I want to go and not feel bad the next day, not have the minor aches and pains. And that is what Relief Factor does. Gets rid of minor aches and pains because it works with your body's anti-inflammatory system. 4 natural ingredients. The only supplement I've taken for 12 years, the only supplement actually I've taken for more than 20 years is Relief Factor because it works. Call 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF, or go to their website, find the starter pack, $19.95, 3-week supply. It's less than $1 a day at relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Byron York is the lead investigative journalist over at the Washington Examiner, Fox News contributor extraordinaire. Byron, how big of a deal, how big of an earthquake is Operation Arctic Frost?
It's a big deal. But Dwayne called me up a couple of minutes ago. He said, now, this really is unprecedented, isn't it? And I said, no, it's actually not. I do remember a story that happened in 2014. John Brennan, such a great guy, who was head of the CIA at the time, had to apologize to Dianne Feinstein, who was the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, because the CIA spied on the Intel Committee. They tapped the computers of the staff of the Intel Committee.
All right, I think this is unprecedented. I'll tell you why. You're right about Feinstein. They went after staff. Snooping on senators' phone calls, 8 of them? I've never heard. I know we went after bad guys before Wilbur Mills got, thrown in jail. We went after people with money in their freezer. I can't remember that guy's name. I think he was from Louisiana. But 8 senators and the Republican Attorney General's Association, he's like Beria. Jack Smith is like our own Beria.
It is a huge deal, and the whole. If you just look at the Trump, the specific indictments of Trump that Jack Smith engaged in, which was the January 20th indictment and the documents indictment, every story about this said, well, this is a novel interpretation of the law, or these are novel charges that have never been tested before in court. I mean, Jack Smith was just either making things up or stretching the law beyond, its breaking point. So to see this, I have to tell you, it is a huge deal. But I am not super surprised by this.
I had a suggestion. I've bounced it off Senator Schmidt. I'm going to bounce it off Senator Ernst as well, which is that Leader Thune ought to stand up a select committee like the Watergate Committee and put Cruz and Cotton and Eric Schmidt and Josh Hawley, all our smart lawyers. They're a bunch of them, Mike Lee. I'm forgetting some. Put them on the Republican side. Don't rig it like the J6 committee. Don't, veto whoever the Democrats want to put on there. They get their minority counsel. But grind, beginning with the lowest level secretary in Jack Smith's office, all the way up to Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland, and find out what happened. I think it'd be A, must viewing, and B, we might get some charges out of it. What do you think?
Well, you're right. Do not ever rig a committee again like the January 6th committee. Never, ever, ever. I think it's a good idea because, I was interesting. You had, it was Senator Schmidt on earlier, right?
Correct.
And he was saying, well, we think it's the phone logs right now, but we don't really know if it stops at that. And that's a huge difference. A phone log and the actual content of a conversation are two really different things.
Yeah, I'm using the word surveillance because it covers everything. I'm not saying tapping.
Right. So but I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just saying we need to know more about this to be sure that the phone logs were the only thing that happened and other things. I mean, we know that the FBI abused the FISA court in the Trump investigation to get a wiretap and renew a wiretap on an American. And I will tell you, there are members of Congress who were involved in the Trump investigation who did believe that somebody like the FBI, maybe the FBI, was looking at them very closely. Not sure if it was on.
Well, now
phone,
nothing is going to
whatever.
surprise me anymore, Byron. I'm so shocked because I did my time at DOJ in the White House counsel's office. No one would ever think of surveilling a senator unless it was abscam, right? Unless someone got caught putting money in their trench coat. Then you have to do it. But even then, you're very careful about it. What's that guy's name? Harrison? He was from New Jersey.
Harrison Williams, I think.
Yeah. And so it happens, but not 8 of them, not on some cooked up deal. And I want to know what Christopher Wray knew. What did Merrick Garland know? And the way you start is at the bottom, and you work. There's an Alexander Butterfield out there. Does anyone remember that? Do you remember Alexander Butterfield?
He was the one who I believe revealed the existence of the Watergate tapes in his testimony to the Watergate Committee.
Sleepy day at the committee.
Previously unknown existence, yes.
Yeah, and he said, well, we got the taping, and everyone said, what? And it's sort of like this came out last night, and I could not believe it. So what have you heard people say about it inside the Beltway today?
Well, first of all, thanks to Senator Grassley for leading on this. He's done a real big deal about this, and he was the real leader on the Senate side when Devin Nunes was on the House side of the investigation into the Trump-Russia matter. People are appalled, and the only thing that the only question there ever is in the first stages of this is, how far did this go? Did they tap these senators? Did they do other things? And did they do this to other people beyond these 8 names that we have right now? So
well, Eric Schmidt told me they did it to RAGA, to the Republican Attorney General's Association, which included Ashley Moody and himself. So it's 10 senators now. Okay.
Then the point is, well, it's just increased by a couple since the earliest reports. So the question is always, is this it, or is there more? And the thing is that when you look, you often find more.
And if you look well, now what usually happens with committees is they grandstand when, in fact, do you remember Iran-Contra? The minority leader, ranking member was Dick Cheney, and he had a lead counsel by the name of Richard Leon. And Dick Leon was a bulldog. He ended up being a federal district court judge, very, very good one, senior status now. They need to hire serious prosecutors here and do it all in the open so that there's a cleansing. Doesn't the FBI need like a car wash?
Well, they do, and I heard you saying you had never been a prosecutor, and a lot of senators have never been a prosecutor. They need to get people who actually have been prosecutors, and I absolutely agree with that, because the one thing you have to guard against when you're dealing with the Senate and the House is just the tendency to bloviate of members, and certainly in hearings, if there are public hearings, it's more difficult to get the information to the public, even if they've discovered the information, in staff.
Remember how they cleared Brett Kavanaugh? They yielded all their time to the lawyer, and the lawyer. Yep. That's how you get someone, and that's how you clear someone. Is you yield all your time. Hey, Byron York, thank you. Follow him on X at Byron York. Special welcome to our new listeners on WHE 1370, the talk of the town in Martinsville, Virginia. Good to have you on board the Borg. We kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger on air, on the Salem News Channel, on radio affiliates across the United States, and we love that. We love driving you home in the afternoon on the East Coast, fill in your lunch hour on the West Coast. Let me tell you, though, I don't do a lot of calls. I do a lot of newsmakers. Senator Ernst is opening up next hour, for example, and I do try and bring you big clips. Since you're in Martinsville, Virginia, we went and found some stuff from the Virginia governor's and attorney general's race today for our new listeners on 1370 WHEE, Talk of the Town in Martinsville. Here's an ad that the Club for Growth dropped today about Abigail Spanberger, who you should not vote for, and Jay Jones, who you should not vote for twice. Vote for Winsome Sears, vote for Maiaris, but here is the Club for Growth ad, cut number 9.
Stunning new developments in the race for Attorney General.
Violent text messages from Jay Jones.
Messages talked about shooting the Speaker of the State House.
Saying he would put 2 bullets in Gilbert's head.
3 people, 2 bullets, and wishing violence upon his children.
He wished Gilbert's wife could watch her own child die in her arms.
It's not just shocking, it's sick. Jay Jones, dressed up in a suit when he should be in a straitjacket.
Club for Growth Action paid for and is responsible for the content of this ad.
Now, how can Spanberger not denounce him and ask him to get off the ticket? She is very radical herself, especially on boys playing girls' sports. So vote for Winsome Sears. Vote for A.G. Maiaris. They're both very good. They'll do a good job for Virginia. I want to go to Donald Trump talking about the Democrats. Mark Carney from Canada was down, but Donald Trump was talking about the shutdown today. Cut number 2.
Well, they're the ones that started it. They're the ones that have it. And it's almost like a kamikaze attack by them. You want to know the truth? This is like a kamikaze attack. They almost, they have nothing to lose. They've lost the elections. they've lost the presidential election in a landslide. I saw the other day where Kamala said this was a very close election. This was one of the biggest sweeps that anybody's ever had. Won the popular vote by millions, won the Electoral College by a massive amount. They said, if I got 270, that would be great. But I got, I think, 312 or 315, and they got 220. So, you know, we won that. But we won counties. The big thing is counties. So out of all of the counties, thousands and thousands, we got 2,500. They got 525. It was a landslide. And we listened, oh, yes, it was close. It was one of the greatest victories ever. And it was a mandate to do what we're doing.
He's right. One more quick cut number 4.
Is it the White House's position that furloughed workers should be paid for their back pay?
I would say it depends on who we're talking about. I can tell you this, the Democrats have put a lot of people in great risk and jeopardy, but it really depends on who
The
you're
Democrats
talking
have
about.
put a lot of people at great risk, and we have put up, Dwayne has put up the transcript of my interview with Senator Schmidt about Arctic frost. Senator Ernst, Pat Harrigan, all coming up next hour. More Habib Reddy Gore over at my YouTube channel as well. Go there if you want to listen to it uninterrupted. Thank you for joining us. Welcome back. Special welcome to our new affiliate in Martinsville, Virginia, WHEE, AM 1370, the talk of the town. We like to keep you in touch with everything going on the Hill and inside the Beltway. One of the ways I do that is to bring in a freshman congressman every year. That is Pat Harrigan, congressman extraordinaire from North Carolina's 10th Congressional District. Congressman, welcome back. I was going to ask you about, and I may yet get to the Pete Hegseth talk to the generals, but first I want to ask you what you think about Operation Arctic Frost surveilling a member of the House and 8 United States senators.
You know, Hugh, I'm friends with Abe Hamadeh, and I'm furious over the fact that it even happened. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous. This is another example of why President Trump got elected back in November, because he committed that the United States government would no longer be effectively politically prosecuting its people, right? The weaponization of government has become a very real thing. And certainly as the evidence continues to come out of how much the prior administration abused the judicial system and the judicial process, used it outside of the bounds for what it should have been used for, I think it's inexcusable.
Now, I've been pushing the idea of a select Senate committee, although Michael Kelly is a congressman, the 8 targets who are senators, I mean, people like Cynthia Loomis and Tommy Tuberville and Bill, this is crazy. I want to start at the bottom and move up through all of Jack Smith's staff to the top, and then up to Jack Smith and up to Christopher Wray and up to Merrick Garland to find out who knew what when. Do you think the Senate ought to do that?
Yeah, I think that they should. I think that the question always comes down to, will they? And ultimately, that's for the Senate to decide. But I've really kind of tried to stay out of promising the American people that we're going to do something, because repeatedly over and over again, we end up not doing anything about it. I think the most important thing that we can accomplish as a set of Republicans right now is to truly end the weaponization of the American government against its own people. We cannot be the ones that perpetuate it. Otherwise, this cycle is just going to continue to metastasize. It's going to get worse. The abuse is going to continue to get worse. And ultimately, we're not going to recognize our country anymore. The dirty political games simply have to stop. We've got to have a methodology of enforcement to make sure that that happens.
That's why I believe in Article 2, policing Article 1, constitutional. I don't want the FBI telling us, oh, everything's fine over here, and we're going to get you an IG report in 3 years. That won't fly. Congressman, let me turn to the shutdown. I don't know that you were elected to shut down the government, and I know that you guys voted in the House to keep the government open, but what do you think of your colleagues in the Senate, the Democrats over there, that have shut down the government?
I think it's really frustrating because this didn't have to happen this way, right? I think everybody, if you've been tuning into national media, understands that the Democrats have voted for this 13 times in the past, right? 12 times under President Biden and then 1 time in March under President Trump. And so, look, the same respect that Republicans showed Democrats during the Biden administration voting for clean continuing resolutions 12 separate times. That respect is not being reciprocated now to Republicans or to President Trump. And I think that's incredibly disrespectful. I also think it's very clear evidence that Democrats are playing political games. And unfortunately, they're playing those political games at the expense of the American people. Because look, Republicans have been responsible for shutdowns in the past. We learned from that shutdowns don't actually help anybody. They just hurt the American people. They hurt our country. I wish the Democrats would wake up and realize that.
Now, Congressman Harrigan, for my new audience especially, you're a West Point grad, you're a Green Beret. You led young men in combat as Green Berets, perhaps some young women. I don't know if they were in SOC. How many of those young enlisted men can afford to skip a paycheck or two?
Basically very close to zero, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you got to understand our military is not did not sign up to serve for the money. They did this because of love for country and doing something much bigger than just simply working on themselves and working on their bottom line for their net worth. And so we've got to realize that our military does not have a long leash of financial stability behind them. We've got to figure this out, and I hope Democrats really understand the ramifications of their decisions, because come the 15th of this month, they're going to be very real for a lot of Americans.
I like to point out any member of the government except the uniformed military and the Coast Guard can quit. If they don't like not getting paid, they can quit and take a new job. You can't quit if you're a Green Beret in Niger, right? You cannot walk away. So we should reopen the government for them, if for nobody else. Now, Congressman, what did you make of Secretary Hegseth and the general officers and admirals coming together for a speech?
I thought it was very pointed that it happened at this particular period of time. I mean, I was with Secretary Hegseth when we flew down on Air Force One with the president to Fort Bragg for an event just about 2 months ago. And what I told him is, I said, look, I know we're trying to root out all this DEI, but it's actually a lot bigger than you think. It's a lot bigger problem than you think that it is, Mr. Secretary. And we had a long conversation about that. And look, I think that he needed to pull everybody together to say, hey guys, look, the way that it's been going in the past, it went way too far to the left. We're not trying to bring this to the right. We're just trying to bring this to the center. And what that center looks like is leading by example, right? Having hard and fast standards. We are not doing promotions, and we are not going to run our military by any other criteria other than merit and capability. That's the only thing that matters, because our mission is to fight and win the nation's wars. And oh, by the way, we've only done that one time since World War II. What we're doing right now is failing. We have got to change course. And I think he delivered that message loud and clear.
When you left West Point, I don't know what year you graduated, Congressman, was it politicized? Was the faculty politicized?
I graduated back in 2009, and I'll tell you, there is always some element of politicization, no matter where the administration goes. The military institution kind of follows. What has been different in the past is those have been relatively minor swings, and the mission can kind of stay on track. What has happened in recent past is those swings have become really, really huge. And so it's incumbent upon us to actually insulate the military from politics. And that's the other part of the conversation that I had with Secretary Hegseth, is that, look, our role is not to increase the politicization of the military. It's to actually insulate it. We have to insulate both our military as well as our service academies, right? The future leaders of our nation, because nobody can survive this political whiplash. It's just too heavy of a burden on everybody's necks. We've got to do better than this. We've got to keep the mission at heart. And I think Pete Hegseth hit the reset button last week with the nation's leaders, generals of the Department of War. And I think that that was a very, very healthy thing to do. Let's hope that we can all keep to it.
Congressman Pat Harrigan, thank you for joining me. Always a pleasure to see you. You're our designated freshman this year. I'm sorry that you've had shutdowns and scandals thus far. Hope you can get some real work done. I know that you got the NDAA out of the Armed Services Committee. Good on that. Let's hope the appropriators come through. Congressman Harrigan, thank you very much. I want to remind everyone that right now it is the second anniversary of 10/7, and we are having, sponsored by the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, a campaign to ask this audience to please contribute to the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews so that they can come to the aid of people in Israel who need it the most. You can do that by calling 800-499-1717, 800-492-1717, 800-492-1717, or go over to hughhewitt.com, and there at the top, you'll see a banner for the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. They take care of people from those in bomb shelters to those who've lost everything, to those who've suffered greatly during the last 2 years of trauma and war. The IFCJ has been there for decades. They know what they're doing. Your deduction is, your contribution is completely tax deductible. It's also very secure if you use the banner at hughhewitt.com or you call 800-492-1717. Also, to remind you, I'm in the Relief Factor studio. There's my Relief Factor bag. I come to you every day, 15 hours a week, and 15 times a week I will remind you, take your Relief Factor. Got my 10K in this morning, was listening to Jack Carr's really fabulous novel, Cry Havoc, and so I went a little bit longer than I intended to because it's very different listening to a Jack Carr novel out with trundling as opposed to reading it. I'll talk to Jack about that, I think, tomorrow. But I certainly encourage, whether you're walking or running, swimming, going to the gym, whatever it is that you do for exercise, try Relief Factor. 4 natural supplements, I carry in curcumin, resveratrol, and omega, designed to do one thing, help your body's anti-inflammatory system be at a complete strength. That's all it does. It supplements your body's anti-inflammatory system to get rid of minor aches and pains. If you're commuting right now, you're on your way home, you're in the Beltway, you're in Atlanta, you're up in Boston, wherever you are, if you're feeling anything bad, like your neck, your shoulder, your back, try Relief Factor, 1-800, the number 4 in the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF, or go get the starter pack, $19.95 at relieffactor.com. 3-week supply, less than $1 a day at relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. This is, of course, the second anniversary of the massacre when Hamas and 3,000 other terrorists, a total of 6,000 terrorists, invaded Israel, and began a war which goes on to this day. Murdered 1,200 people, more than 1,100 of them were Israelis, dozens were foreigners. They kidnapped 250 people, they wounded 5,000. Hamas is paying the price, and the war will go on unless they capitulate soon. But I caught up today, of all days, with Aviv Redig-Gur, really a treasure, an incredible spokesperson for what's going on in Israel. We have already posted the entire 47-minute interview over at my YouTube channel. So if you like anything you hear, go over and watch the entire thing or listen to it. I'll put it on our podcast tonight as well. While you're at YouTube, please like and subscribe so that more people find the algorithm, or the algorithm finds more people to push Aviv out to, so that they can hear a comprehensive overview 2 years later of what an Israeli thinks of what has happened and what is happening in the United States. Here's part 4 of that interview. I then heard, for the first time, I heard Dan Senor make a mistake this week. I don't know if you listened to him talk to Sam Harris. Sam Harris is Jewish. He's a militant atheist, kind of a dime store Christopher Hitchens. And he began to blast religious revivalism as a danger to America. It's actually not. It's as rigorous as it was when Francis Asbury was writing the circuit for the Methodists, or John Carroll was setting up the Catholic Church to grow in its early iterations in the post-revolutionary America. I don't worry about that kind of anti-Semitism. I worry about the genuine article, the real deal Islamist extremists. I've been reading Jake Tapper's new book, Race Against Terror. That pipeline is still open. Do you know that? Do you realize it's still open to the United States? There are still Islamists coming here.
I want to say this
Argue with
clearly. Me. Yeah. So I am a big fan of religious revivalism, but it has to be the American version. Because,
right.
I don't know, just to go back to Tucker, I apologize, I don't know the man, you do. He is fawns over the Qataris. And he loves their social conservatism, was how someone explained it to me who knows him. But the Emiratis are more socially conservative than the Qataris. What the Emiratis aren't is Muslim Brotherhood. They don't believe that the religion of Islam was hollowed out and now has to be refilled, and there's a vanguard, and we have to now rebuild our society based on that, and we have to conquer the world with it, and we also, the Jews are the problem. And they don't fund Hamas. So a lot of this pipeline is the Qataris who he platforms, and the platforming of Daryl Cooper, and who talks about Nazis constantly, and the platforming of all these. And now on the left, this stuff is deep, and it's this anti-colonial stuff you saw in the Algeria war, and the Jews are front and center as well. I don't mean to let anybody off the hook. The left is doing this more actionably, but I'm telling you, when people become obsessed with Jews, okay, Jews did not invent the porn industry. All right, the top 10 names.
I hadn't heard that one, by the way, Habib.
Oh,
that was news to me. I hadn't heard that one. I don't travel in the right circles.
It's all over. No, it's all over the kinds of forums that Daryl Cooper travels in. And what they talk about over there is that it's a Jewish invention to corrupt the youth, which is 100 years ago in Egypt exactly how they talked. And by the way, the top 10 names are Christians, and I think 2 or 3 of them are Muslims, and they're just business people. They're not. Their Christianity and Islam has nothing to do with it. They're just business people building that stuff out. But all of this stuff it's now in the mainstream. It's now, why does Candace have listeners? And if we can't explain who is doing that and what they're thinking, what's going through their heads, I learned from the Charlie Kirk assassination that there's a universe I can't imagine, and it's out there. And
you and me both.
It's outside of
John
my
Podhoretz said
algorithm,
on the commentary podcast that the internet has allowed communities to come together that ought never to have been allowed to come together, and that ranges from pedophilia to anti-Israel or anti-Semitic cranks of all sort. I'm going back to my original question, though. Is Israel prepared to lose England and then slowly watch the United States become paralyzed over Israel and cut off arms? Because the Democratic Party, and I want to go right at this, and I apologize for putting you in the position, you're always nonpartisan. The Democratic Party has nominated an anti-Semite communist to run New York. Their anti-Semitic, hard-left, neo-Marxist wing is dominant and ascendant in their party. That means one of the 2 great parties. We've got some problems in the Republican Party. I'm not blind to them, but the Democratic Party has become anti-Israel. Are you watching that?
Yeah, I am. You asked me a simple question. Let me try and answer it simply and bluntly. Is Israel prepared to lose Britain and or America? I'll put it real simple. Yes, obviously. What are we going to do? Fall down and die? Like, what are we going to? It's not up to us to lose it, whether or not America chooses a different path. But it's a funny thing. The American-Israeli Defense Alliance. By the way, Israel won its most dangerous and existential wars. 48, America. It was under an American arms embargo. 56, 67, it won without America. Okay, America comes in the early 70s, in the late 60s and early 70s. America begins tentatively the alliance with Israel, not because of love and passionate support for Israel. America begins to support Israel. Kennedy, I think, is the first one to sign a deal to send some missiles because he's trying to keep Israel from going to the Soviet side. The Soviets have backed the Arabs. He's trying to have that base. And also because Israel's getting nukes, and he wants, allegedly, according to foreign source, I don't have any in the intelligence, so I'm just going to talk about what I think I know. But he wants to keep the Israelis feeling safe so they don't go crazy and do something stupid. And that's the American bear hug. And that's the strategy from day one. Donald Trump just gave a defense alliance to the Qataris where he committed the United States with an executive order, I think 3 weeks ago, to physically stop, kinetically, militarily, CENTCOM is going to stop an Israeli airstrike on Qatar. Now, that it's a kind of good cop, bad cop, because he then protects Qatar from a crazy Israel that could do anything, this wounded tiger strategy of Israel. Qatar is now pressuring Hamas to sign the deal. It's this good cop, bad cop routine, this bear hug where America reins Israel in, that's been the actual strategy from day one. The Pentagon loves Israel for reasons having nothing to do with AIPAC or the Jews. I mean, AIPAC tries to advance this stuff, but that's not the reason. The Pentagon loves Israel because it's extremely hard to get the American defense industry to actually build new things because of vast bureaucracy and massive centralization that has destroyed competition. And Israel is a kind of workaround. You hand Israel $100 million, they'll build you an Iron Dome that America co-owns. Everything the Pentagon ever pays Israel to do, it co-owns with the Israelis. And so Israel's useful to America. That's where the relationship comes from. I don't understand the Dave Smiths who are convinced that there's this, Israel is like this, it can't run the information war and the Gaza war at all of any kind, but it's this nefarious capability of just controlling the minds of Americans, and every American before Dave Smith was born was an idiot. I don't understand that argument. Israel was useful to
ignorance is a choice, and he has made that choice. Yeah, ignorance is a choice. Yeah. Dave Smith and many others have made that choice. They don't want to learn. Let's pause right there. We'll come back with more of my interview with Haviv Rettig-Gur. I remind you, if you like what you hear, and you should, I think Haviv is going to be around for 30 years, influencing opinion in the world, and certainly bringing light and knowledge to America about what's going on in Israel. The entire interview, the 47 minutes, is posted at my YouTube channel, Hugh Hewitt YouTube. When you're there, please like and subscribe so we spread it further out into the ecosystem that the algorithm runs. Hugh Hewitt at YouTube. Earlier today, I interviewed Haviv Rettig-Gur. Haviv is very popular with his audience. He comes around every couple of months when I can grab him, and he was available on this, the second anniversary of the Massacre of 10/7. So I asked him to join me. I do, however, recommend that you like and subscribe to Ask Haviv Anything. And if you think he's got a particularly unique voice, support him at Patreon. He's also a contributor at The Free Press. Here's part 5 of my interview with Haviv. Okay, Dr. Oren has said for years, Israel moves to the right with every election, with the demographic change, and especially after 10/7. The United States, I thought, was inevitably going to move to the right after 9/11, and it didn't. It actually lurched to the left with President Obama, then lurched into incoherence since then with President Biden's infirmity. What happens when Netanyahu stands astride Israel until he gets toppled eventually by age or an election? What happens after that?
There's a poll yesterday by Hebrew University, by this study center at Hebrew University, a very significant and very trustworthy poll. And one of the many, many questions it asked, it's annual, so we can track it over time, is do you trust the political leadership? Not narrowly Netanyahu, but larger, the political class, the political. And distrust of the political leadership is almost ubiquitous. I mean, only 1/3 of coalition voters, the voters for this government, for these parties, for the conservative parties, said they trust that they are. The specific question was that they are managing the country on making substantive decisions rather than only political decisions about the war, about many things. Overall, the country, 60% think that they're all the decisions made by the cabinet are political. Only 15% say they're substantive, and even among the coalition's own voters, only a third say that they're substantive. So there's a huge, deep, deep distrust of the Israeli political class. And when Israelis are asked, "Are you optimistic for the future of Israel?" then on almost every ground they're optimistic. On politics, they're deeply pessimistic. And so this question of what happens after Israeli politics, after Netanyahu, where do Israeli politics go? We have seen over the last 2 years that our politicians have just not been the kind of... everybody in this country has rallied. Everybody. I mean, Hamas on October 7 killed 50 Bedouin Israelis, Muslim Bedouin Israelis. Muslim Bedouins went to this war with the Jews. The Druze went to this war with the Jews, and Israel then defended the Druze of Syria also, because there's this 75-year alliance between the Jews and the Druze in this region. There's a sense of solidarity, a sense of strength, a sense of competence, except when all Israelis turn to politics, and then everything feels like it's falling apart. And so, 25 years from now, what's going to be in Israeli politics? Look, it's going to be a new generation. This generation, one of the searing traumas of this moment is a leadership that refused to step up and be the leadership we needed. We've talked about this. I know a lot of people who listen to you love Netanyahu, respect Netanyahu. There's a lot to respect there. Tremendous decisions, and I've supported him on many, many of his political fights and specific decisions over the last 2 years. But he would go for months at a time without speaking to the world, but also without speaking to Israelis about his decisions in the war that their families were suffering from. And there's been a sense that they're not with us. And because they're not with us, we've been more alone, more stranded, more adrift than we should have been in this terrible, terrible emergency. Now, you could love Netanyahu and think his fundamental war decisions were right. He still caused that deep distrust and that deep sense of pessimism with the leadership of this particular government and how it has led the country. The fight over the ultra-Orthodox draft people doing 200 days in the reserves, their businesses collapsed. And the ultra-Orthodox parties are defending, and the Likud party is defending the ultra-Orthodox refusing to do their part and shoulder their part of the burden after everyone else is dying to protect them. So
that's on my list to ask you. I've got to say that in the United States, from our trauma of 9/11, I expected and for many years thought that the warriors of that generation who went off to fight in Afghanistan and Iraq would eventually come back and lead in American politics. And there are many examples of that, from Senator Cotton to Dan Harrigan. Cotton's been in the business for 14 years. Harrigan's been in it for 2. There are a lot of those, but not nearly enough. But in Israel, everybody serves. So I'm wondering if that isn't, in fact, going to move you significantly towards seriousness. I'm not going to say right or left, just sobriety about the world, realism. Has Israeli media changed? All right, let's pause right there. Has Israeli media changed? I will come back. I'm going to talk with Senator Ernst live after this break, and then I will come back and get one more bit of my interview with Haviv Reddy-Gur. It's 47 minutes long. It's a lot of interview. I can't play it all today. I have posted it over at my YouTube channel. I hope you will go and watch it all, forward it to your friends, like and subscribe to the channel, and then follow him at Ask Haviv Anything, because great, sober, sane voices are few and far between when it comes to Israel and the Middle East. He is one of them. Follow him, like him, listen to him. Senator Joni Ernst represents Iowa. Welcome back, Senator. Great to see you. I was going to ask you about your letter to Russ Vought to save us $2 trillion. I was going to ask you about the shutdown, but I have to start with Operation Arctic Frost. You're not one of the surveilled senators, but how did you react to that news?
Oh, absolutely awful, Hugh. I think we can all recognize that. It's odd that we had a Judiciary Committee hearing. I'm not on the committee, but I did catch part of it where Attorney General Pam Bondi was in front of the committee, and not any of our Democratic colleagues brought up the fact that the Biden administration was using the deep state and targeting our FBI against sitting United States senators. Talk about the weaponization of the federal government. So when they're talking about a threat to democracy with all the hand-wringing coming from our Senate Democrats, this is what they should be focused on, is the actual weaponization of our federal government targeted against sitting representatives and senators of the people of the United States. So it is absolutely appalling, Hugh, and this should never happen in the United States of America.
So, Senator, I've been lobbying some of your colleagues that there ought to be a select committee like the Watergate Select Committee, not a pretend committee like the J6 committee. Don't stack it with just Republicans or Democrats who like the subject matter. Let them hire their own staff, but get serious. You got a lot of good lawyer colleagues, a lot of prosecutors in that body. I'd like to have the country focused on what happened, because this is unprecedented. 8 senators, 10 if you count Attorney General Schmidt and Attorney General Moody. I think they were caught up in the Raga dragnet. Is there any conversation about that yet? Because the American people would watch that. They would watch it by the millions.
Oh, they certainly would, Hugh. And yes, there are a number of discussions going on what should be the repercussions, but we truly need to understand the depth of Arctic frost. Who was it that authorized this? And why did we have telecommunications companies that just blindly went along with this? So was it Joe Biden that gave the authority? Was it Jack Smith? Was it Comey? Who knows? We don't know. So we do need an investigation. And I think you're right. There does need to be some level of special counsel, special investigative committee, whatever that structure looks like. We need it, and we need it now. Again, this is just, it goes so far beyond the pale.
Now, my friend Mark Tapscott, old friend of mine, wrote up that you had sent Russ Vought, the head of OMB, a list of $2 trillion in savings. If they're there, Director Vought will get them, right? He's the guy with the scalpel. What have you heard back from him?
He is the guy, and he loves this. And the White House has been promoting a lot of the work that we have done in this letter. So this is part and parcel what I started with my Squeal Awards and documenting government waste throughout this past decade. And I had presented those findings to Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk right after last November's election down at Mar-a-Lago. We sat down, we talked about these savings for the federal government. So they did start working through a number of those, but we had significant savings left. So I took a number of these projects, I rolled them into one letter to Russ Vogt, sent it over, and said, you know what, if we need to find additional savings, this is an easy blueprint for you to follow. Russ has been so great to work with as the director of the Office of Management and Budget, and he is all about it. If there is waste in the federal government, if it doesn't make sense for the American people, he is about making those recommendations to the president and finding a way to get rid of unnecessary programs. So we are hopeful that he will act on a number of these items.
Now, Senator, you're a soldier, and I think one of your kids is a soldier. How many of the E1s through E4s can, even the E7s, can afford to skip a paycheck in 2 weeks?
Yeah, absolutely. Both my son-in-law and my daughter are actively serving in the United States Army. And this is a really difficult time. And my daughter and I had a conversation about it last night as well. She has been reaching out and she's always asking, Mom, when is this shutdown going to end? Because they do have a number of very young soldiers. And we have to remember those very young soldiers, whether they're 19, 20, 21 years old, they also perhaps have family members and they have children and they need to be fed. We need to pay these military men and women. So the sooner we get this shutdown over, the sooner we can resume payments to those young men and women that are wearing our nation's uniform. You know, and this is what is so outrageous to me is that the Democrats have been voting no against a clean, continuing resolution to fund our government, knowing that they are putting service members at risk, knowing that the WIC program, Women, Infants, and Children program, is going to run out of funds any day now, and young women won't be able to feed their children. So there are so many issues right now. We can solve it by opening up the federal government and then continuing discussions about what the Democrats would like to see in long-term funding. But we need to make sure we keep the government open in order to do that.
Now, Senator, I pointed out everyone else in the federal government who's not working and not getting paid, they can quit. Soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardmen, they can't quit. They signed an oath. They've got to serve their time whether they're paid or not. And they won't quit. They won't desert. But do the Democrats realize that? Do they have enough veterans? They got a few, like Jack Reed. Do they know what they're going to do to the youngsters?
I don't think they truly do, Hugh. And having worn the uniform, I've been through those government shutdowns. I was a battalion commander when we went through that shutdown in 13, 14. And it was really, really difficult because we had to reschedule training. We had to cancel weapons ranges, things that keep the readiness up for America's military had to go by the wayside because we couldn't obligate the funds to keep our military running. They are going through the same thing, making those decisions as commanders out there. I know field training exercises are being canceled. I have men and women from the Iowa Army National Guard, 1,800 of them serving in the Middle East right now. They are not getting paid. They are not getting paid. And they are in a very dangerous area. So it's true for every serviceman and woman. We owe them to keep the federal government opening so they can continue to support their families. They believe in our country should believe in them as well, and make sure that we're not shutting the government down.
Senator Joni Ernst, always great to talk to you. Thank you for your candor and your straightforward talk, for your list of Russ Vogt, and for your applauding digging deep into Arctic frost, because when we get underneath the tundra, we're going to find a lot of dirt. Senator Ernst, thank you. I want to close today by reminding you the entire interview with Haviv Reddy Gur is posted over at YouTube, at my YouTube channel. I suggest you watch it from beginning to end. I think we got about 35 minutes of the 47 played. I'll try and get the rest this week. Cynthia Loomis, senator from Wyoming, one of the senators surveilled by the Biden Department of Justice, had this to say on Fox News today about Operation, what's it called, Arctic Frozen, or Frozen Arctic, Arctic Ice, Arctic Frost. Cut number 10.
You know, I have had a meeting with Deputy Director Dan Bongino. He called everyone in who you just named that was on that list, and they were shocked. We were all shocked. And in some cases, we can't figure out what sort of string the yarn has taken to pull us all together, and why they would have chosen those of us who are on the list to be investigated, to be spied on. So it was interesting as senators were coming in the room and Dan Bongino was showing them the memo that I just showed you, their reaction was, this is unspeakably unconstitutional. What is my name doing on this list? And then thinking back to the time around January 6th, who did I talk to? And we were all in disbelief that the Biden administration would do this to Republican U.S. senators. All that we have in common that we can figure out is that we supported President Trump.
I can't tell you when I saw that last night. I didn't believe it. I blew up the memo that Senator Grassley released. I looked at the senator, Lindsey Graham, longtime member of the Armed Services Committee, longtime member of the military. Then Senator Dan Sullivan, Marine, former NSC, cleared for every intel thing. He might be on intel now, I'm not sure. And I'm amazed that they did this. They being unnamed agents, pursuing the direction of unnamed prosecutors, for whatever reason it was. I really do believe we need a select committee like the Watergate Select Committee. Let's go at it carefully. Not a fake committee like J6. J6 was a very bad day in American history, but the committee, unfortunately, was illegitimate from the day it was taken over by Nancy Pelosi, and she jammed on Liz Cheney and the guy from Illinois and pretended it was a bipartisan committee. It was not. Republicans were not given their own counsel. Don't do any of that nonsense. No jokes. Just do a select committee. And let the Democrats pick whoever they want. They can pick the most partisan. They can pick the most able. Up to them. They're running out of the ladder. There are not a lot of able Democrats left up there, and Jack Reed's probably tired of always being tapped on the shoulder to do the heavy lifting. But they got to get going. Chairman of that committee probably would be Cotton, lawyer and soldier. Maybe Cruz. Senator Cruz, a superb advocate. You might go and get Mike Lee on that committee. Josh Hawley and Eric Schmidt have done their share of prosecutions as attorney generals. There are a lot of fine lawyers, and you could do 5 and 4 and go to work tomorrow and give them subpoena power and start with the bottom of the Jack Smith organization and work on up to the top. That's it for today. I remind you over at YouTube is my Haviv Reddy Gur interview. If you're just tuning on, you missed it. Go and listen to it all.